let's see what is the definition of risk. How do we define risk, right? And there's this like almost universally accepted definition that risk is a function of likelihood and impact. So these are the two components that form risk when they're present, or more like risk is you calculate risk based on them. So ignore the previous sentence; it didn't make too much sense. So risk is calculated based on these two criteria. And again, if we get out of the IT terminology or the IT world for a moment, you're gonna see that this is almost what we do every day in our daily lives, right? You perceive something as a big risk, for example, if it has, let's say, if it would have a great impact on your life. But then there's also likelihood. So how likely is that even, is that it even happens? So maybe an example of that would be, what if I go on a ship and this ship, basically explodes in the middle of the sea, or something Titanic-like happens, and I just drown and die over there. This would obviously have pretty big impact on my life. Right? But at the same time, what's the likelihood of that even happening? First of all, I'm not even into boarding ships. Second of all, how often do you even get such an incident happening, right? So I'm just trying to paint a picture in order to make an analogy and trying to explain better what these two mean. But make sure to remember that risk is generated using these two. And this is something that you might also find as a question on a lot of different exams and tests, okay? So let's move on. What are some of the popular risk management frameworks out there? For now, just make sure to remember them just by their name. We're going to go into a bit more detail later on, but for now, just make sure to remember the most popular ones. You have the NIST CSF, which is one of the biggest, the most respectful ones. ISO 27001, the DoD, RMF, and FAIR. So for now, just make sure to remember these names. So we're gonna get back to that later on. Okay, so let's see what the risk management process actually looks like. So there are 4 steps that you need to remember, and just like other times during our lessons, I want to remind you that you might see these terms phrased differently by other people. You might see, for example, a step in this process that's not called control, but it's called something else, and you might be thinking, okay, so what's going on? Did I remember these wrong or anything like that? The reality is that people are just not necessarily consistent every time when it comes down to such terminology. But it's perfectly fine to just remember them as they are shown on the screen right now. So first you have identified, then you have assessed, you have control, and then you have review controls. And that's that's almost self-explanatory why they're in that order. So first you have to identify your risk. That's pretty obvious. Then you have to make your assessments. There's the control after that, and so on. Now, once you know that, then we can actually go down into a lot more detail regarding any one of these two. And for example, some of the key terminology that you need to be familiar with is regarding the risk assessment step, which is pretty important. And you want to make sure you understand it right. So for example, here you have these two terms, qualitative and quantitative risk analysis, and you need to make sure that you understand what they mean and what the pros and cons of each are. So there's no perfect technique or solution out there. This is pretty obvious, but from time to time, we do have the opportunity to tweak something in order to make it better, or we're seeing the pros in something as opposed to its cons and so on. So just make sure to remember that these two are not. It's not like one is better than the other. Each one of them has its own pros and cons. So first, let's look at qualitative risk analysis. So what are the some of its most important characteristics, right? So first of all, it's quick and easy to understand. So qualitative risk analysis basically means expressing the risk analysis in terms like the risk is either high, medium, or low. This is how you would express that when it's a qualitative risk analysis. And because of that, it's obviously easy to understand, right? The limited differentiation between levels is because of the fact that you have like a limited vocabulary to work with. So the risk is either high. You can say you can, apart from high, medium, and low, you can actually add other levels as you wish, but there are some obvious limitations to that, right? So for example, you cannot just manually create 20 different levels, because all of the levels are always going to gravitate around these initial three ones: high, medium, and low. Okay, and then it's imprecise. That's pretty obvious. But again, these are combinations of pros and cons. So of course, the quantitative risk analysis that we're going to talk about next is more precise, because it's actually fully based on metrics, and it's fully based on data that you're using in order to conduct the risk analysis itself. So, for example, if with the qualitative one, we can say, okay, so I think this falls under the category of high risks. Here, you are doing some calculations of your own using the different inputs, and then based on that, you're saying, okay, so this is the output of the actual risk analysis, and this is what it shows, and this is why it shows it. It's because of all these inputs. So it's pretty precise, but at the same time it's slow, which again makes sense because it needs more time in order to for all these operations to be conducted, and then it's also expensive. And all of these reasons are kind of interconnected between each other. So this is why it is what it is with the quantitative risk analysis. Okay, so next on, let's take a quick look at our risk treatment options. So if you have a risk, then you have pretty much 4 ways of handling it or dealing with it. And these are all concepts that to an extent you're already familiar with that you have already found to exist even in real life, right? So let's take a quick look at each one of them. So the first one is avoid. And risk avoidance is like saying, okay, so there's a risk that, if I drive under the influence, for example, there's a big risk that I might get caught. So instead of doing something about it, I'm just going to avoid this risk by not driving my car at all. So it's similar with when you're actually implementing this. If you're implementing something somewhere, you have to do risk avoidance. This means that you're not dealing with the situation directly, the risk that's out there and that was identified. You're just avoiding it, but by not doing what led you to this risk in the first place. Okay. Then you have risk transfer. Risk transfer, the analogy that's, or not the analogy, but the example that's always given regarding it, and I'm going to give the same one because it's very easy to comprehend and understand, is when you have an insurance policy, right? When you have an insurance policy, the risk is pretty much with them, because if anything is to happen that that the insurance is about, they're going to pay you the money. So, for example, if your car I don't know, explodes, for example, then they're going to pay you the money because you have transferred the risk to them. And there are similar ways of signing contracts for insurance policies in cybersecurity, but it's a topic we're going to talk about in another lecture. Then you have mitigate. So mitigation is basically addressing the risk, right? For example, let's say that there's a risk of somebody entering our home because the locks are very old and are very easy to pick. Then the mitigation will directly be to just change the locks and you'll be good to go. And then you have acceptance. And acceptance basically means, it's basically what it sounds. You're accepting the risk and you're saying, okay, I understand that this could happen, but I want to take my chances, and I'm just gonna sign that I'm accepting it, and I'm gonna move on with whatever I'm doing, right? So this is risk acceptance. Okay, thank you, and I'll talk to you in a bit.